In 1750, Emperor Qianlong began an ambitious building project that would ultimately see a magnificent imperial park established, the Summer Palace. The emperor, however, was worried about his people's reaction to his extravagance. So why was he so determined to go ahead with his magnificent garden? Find out in episode 1 of Untold Stories from the Summer Palace.
Nature gives birth to art. Architecture is history made manifest. When the dust of the ages is gently swept away, immortal works of art are brought to light, and history is revealed in the present. The Summer Palace, located in the northwestern suburbs of Beijing, 15 kilometers from the Forbidden City, is known in Chinese as Yiheyuan, or the Garden of Nurtured Harmony. The scenery here is dominated by a hill named Longevity and a lake named Kunming. Originally, the Summer Palace was called Qingyuan, the Garden of Clear Ripples. Everywhere in this vast park, one can touch remnants of history, on the hill and around the lake, in the midst of the flowers and trees, and in the pavilions, terraces, and numerous buildings, large and small. This screen once belonged to the Qing Emperor Qianlong. During his reign, the landscape here underwent momentous changes. For hundreds of years before the creation of the Summer Palace, this was a wetland. Longevity Hill was known as Jar Hill. The lake at its foot, which was originally called Jar Hill Lake, became West Lake. Flowers and plants flourished in the area surrounding Jar Hill and West Lake. Its beauty was stunning, and people flocked here to climb the hill, swim in the lake, fish, and write and recite poetry. In November 1749, during the 14th year of the reign of Emperor Qianlong, the area surrounding Jar Hill and West Lake became a hive of activity. Thousands of workers had arrived to claim the silt from the lake and cart it to the eastern foot of Jar Hill. Emperor Qianlong had ordered that West Lake be dredged and enlarged. The man in charge of the project was the head of the Office of the Imperial Household, Prime Minister San He. No one at the time could have predicted that what appeared to be a routine water conservancy operation would evolve into a monumental construction project. From the time of the Yuan dynasty over 4 centuries earlier, Jade Spring Hill to the west of Beijing had been an important source of drinking water for the city. In the Qing dynasty, the drinking water for all the imperial palaces came from Jade Spring Hill. Emperor Kangxi, Qianlong's grandfather, had begun the construction of a number of imperial gardens in Beijing's western suburbs. But these gardens required a considerable amount of water. As a result, there wasn't enough for the capital, and the level of the canals transporting goods to the city fell dangerously low. Finding new water sources in the western suburbs became a matter of considerable urgency. In 1748, Emperor Qianlong sent a team to Beijing's western suburbs to conduct a hydrographical survey. The team reported back that there were dozens of springs capable of supplying water. Soon, a network of aqueducts crisscrossed the area, and it was through this system that water from the Western Hills and Jade Spring Hill was carried to West Lake. Originally a shallow crescent-shaped body of water, West Lake, after being dredged and having the extra water added, not only became much deeper, but also doubled in size, so that it stretched all the way to the foot of Jia Hill. An embankment was built to prevent West Lake from flooding and causing damage to the nearby Yuan Mingyuan Park and the Garden of Eternal Spring. As it was located to the west of the Garden of Eternal Spring, it was called the West Embankment. The original earthen embankment was later replaced by a stone one that is higher and broader than the original. 3 sluice gates were added, which were closed at normal times to retain the water in the lake. But when Beijing needed it, the south sluice gate was opened to allow water to flow from the lake into the city. If the nearby gardens needed water, the east gate would be opened. And if the lake was too full, the north gate would be opened and the water allowed to flow into the Qing River. West Lake at the foot of Jia Hill was, in fact, Beijing's first man-made reservoir. Later, after an additional embankment was built along the west side of West Lake, the original West Embankment came to be known as the East Embankment. This is the embankment that can now be seen running along the east side of Lake Kunming. Standing beside the East Embankment is a life-size bronze ox. Cast during the reign of Emperor Qianlong, it reflects the ancient belief that rivers are guarded by sacred oxen. Unusually for sculptures of that time, which tended to be impressionistic in style, this bronze ox is very realistic. Its eyes sparkle as if they are actually seeing. The astonishing detail of the sculpture is a testament to the very high artistic level attained in bronze casting during the Qing dynasty. In May 1750, after the dredging of West Lake had been completed, Emperor Qianlong decided to change its name. Henceforth, it would be called Lake Kunming. The name of the hill beside it was changed from Jia Hill to Longevity Hill. With the completion of this water conservancy project, the water supply was sufficient to meet the capital's entire needs. But if Prime Minister San He thought he could relax, he was mistaken. To his surprise, the Emperor, rather than declare the project finished, instead ordered him to have a new temple built on the southern slope of Longevity Hill. The Temple of Immense Gratitude and Longevity would stand on the ruins of an old temple, the Temple of Serenity. Unbeknown to Sanhe and his officials, Emperor Qianlong had begun to formulate plans for a truly massive construction project. In his record of Longevity Hill and Lake Kunming, Emperor Qianlong later wrote, "I had 3 objectives when I launched the Jia Hill West Lake project. First, to carry out the needed water conservancy work. Second, to train my waterborne troops. And third, with the Empress Dowager's 60th birthday approaching, to build a temple in her honour." It was only with the publication of this record that people realised what Qianlong's purpose in renaming Jia Hill really was. It would be called Longevity Hill to mark his mother's 60th birthday. So it transpired that the Emperor's mother, a devout Buddhist, was the link between the 2 seemingly unrelated construction projects, the Water Conservancy and the Temple of Immense Gratitude and Longevity. Work on the Temple of Immense Gratitude and Longevity began in earnest in 1751. In February 1752, Prime Minister Sanhe had curtains and streamers hung in the main hall of the temple and had all the sacrificial vessels set out. Emperor Qianlong, when he saw this, said, "Excellent. Leave everything just the way it is." The Emperor took a personal interest in everything. He oversaw every detail from the exterior of the Temple of Immense Gratitude and Longevity to its interior decoration.
传着万寿山做大墙角一份儿，万寿山乐寿堂寝宫楼上或钟或表安一份儿。传旨万寿山勤政殿地平宝座着交造办处乘坐。万寿山厅礼馆着请赏唯美现安插屏一样，做插屏2件。
The Emperor's directives covered every detail, big and small, and he insisted that every aspect of the project, even such seemingly trivial matters as the mounting of a clock or the placement of a screen, be approved by himself. And so, work began on a series of halls, pavilions and other buildings, all done in accordance with an endless stream of imperial edicts. It soon became apparent, judging by its scale, that the project was far more than a simple temple. In the 15th year of his reign, the year 1750, Emperor Qianlong issued an edict that the area encompassing Longevity Hill and Lake Kunming should henceforth be known as Qingyi Yuan, the Garden of Clear Ripples. An agency was established to take care of the garden's management. However, the scale of the project elicited considerable criticism, both at court and in society at large. The Qing imperial family, which originally came from northeast China, felt an affinity with nature. Emperor Qianlong's grandfather Kangxi had initiated the construction of imperial gardens. He had 4 built in Beijing's northwestern suburbs: the Garden of Eternal Spring, the Garden of Tranquility and Pleasure, the Garden of Tranquility and Brightness, and the Garden of Perfect Splendor, or Yuan Mingyuan. Emperor Qianlong ordered the expansion of Yuan Mingyuan so that instead of its original 20 scenic spots, it had 40. He called the garden a treasure of heaven and a marvel of earth. He said that there was no other place in the world where an emperor would rather spend his leisure time. However, the emperor also instructed his successors not to build any more imperial gardens because of the enormous cost involved. He said that emperors should be thrifty and keep the interests of the people at heart. But despite his endorsement of thrift, just 6 years later he launched a massive construction project at the Garden of Clear Ripples. 11 years later, the Summer Palace, as it would be known, was completed. Emperor Qianlong, in his Record of Longevity Hill and Lake Kunming, justified his extravagance, stating that the improvements to Lake Kunming were done for water conservancy purposes. That the lake and the adjacent Longevity Hill were of unsurpassed beauty was purely coincidental. He argued, "How could I fail to embellish their beauty with architecture?" However, the emperor clearly recognized that this explanation was somewhat far-fetched, and his later statements on the matter tended to be self-deprecating. "Is not the Summer Palace another garden after I said no more gardens? It appears that I've gone back on my word. Who would believe that I built it because the water conservancy work made the construction convenient?" For generations, scholars have been fascinated by the question of just why Emperor Qianlong confessed to going back on his word in building the Summer Palace. On the 18th day of the 11th month of the year 1752, at the Temple of Immense Gratitude and Longevity, sacrificial vessels were put in their due places and streamers were hung from the gate. With that, the preparations for the celebration of the Empress Dowager's 60th birthday were completed. It was the eve of the Empress Dowager's birthday. Emperor Qianlong hosted a banquet for his mother at Zining Palace in the Forbidden City. Afterwards, the two of them departed the city through Shizhiman Gate. They travelled for the first time to the newly completed Summer Palace. The climax of the day's activities was a celebration on Longevity Hill. By this time, the major construction work at the Summer Palace was completed. The Hall of Happiness and Longevity, the Hall of Jade Ripples, and Wenchang Pavilion had all been finished. The famous Italian painter Giuseppe Castiglione was working on a sketch for a painting to decorate the corridor behind the Hall of Happiness and Longevity. Work on landscaping in front of and behind Longevity Hill was proceeding at a frantic pace. It was common to see groups of children running around the various palaces and halls at the Summer Palace. But they weren't playing. Instead, they were compacting the ground to provide a good foundation for the buildings to be erected. As a reward for their efforts, they received several pieces of silver. Emperor Qianlong's reign was an era of unprecedented prosperity for China. The national treasury held more than 30 million taels of silver. It's estimated that China at the time possessed around a quarter of the entire world's total wealth. The imperial government was constantly initiating new projects. The idea was to keep the wealth in circulation and stimulate economic development. In previous dynasties, labourers working on imperial projects had generally been unpaid conscripts, and most of the building materials had been commandeered. But by the time of the Qing dynasty, it was common practice for the government to hire labourers, and craftsmen were paid by the day. Moreover, the government bought the building materials it needed. The wages paid to the labourers were the highest to be had, and the same was true of the prices paid for the materials. Records from the archive of the Office of the Imperial Household show that there was a detailed pay scale for the workers who built the Summer Palace. Carpenters, stonemasons and other skilled craftsmen were paid 2.5 grams of silver per day, while master craftsmen were paid 4 grams. On the front slope of Longevity Hill stands the Pavilion of Buddhist Fragrance. It is flanked by two other buildings. Bao Yuan Pavilion is on the west side and the Revolving Archives is on the east side. Both date back to the original construction of the Summer Palace. Bao Yuan Pavilion and the Revolving Archives were built by two different private contractors. Even in imperial times, it seems, it was recognized that healthy competition could have positive benefits for construction quality. In 2007, experts using advanced surveying techniques discovered that the two buildings' elevation was almost exactly the same. We have no way of knowing how the builders were able to achieve this level of precision without modern equipment. What we can say for certain, however, is that these great works of architecture are an enduring testament to the skill and devotion of the thousands of anonymous craftsmen who built them. Bao Yuan Pavilion is made entirely of bronze. Every piece that went into building it was exquisitely cast, from the outside walls to the interior decoration. According to records, the quantity of bronze used was almost exactly the same as that envisaged in the plans. In other words, there was virtually no waste. The supervision of this project was meticulous. The design work was the responsibility of the architectural studio, while an accounting office was responsible for the materials. Any aspect of the project that cost more than 50 taels of silver and any materials that cost more than 200 taels required the personal approval of the emperor. The names of the foreman and of all the craftsmen who worked on Bao Yuan Pavilion are engraved on one of its interior walls. Individuals took charge of and were accountable for every aspect of the work. If any quality problem arose, the craftsmen who carried out the task and the supervisors and managers in charge of them would be punished. A building called Sumeru Lingjing stands on the rear slope of Longevity Hill. In 1772, a rainstorm caused the roof to leak. The contractor responsible for the work was not only forced to pay for the repairs, he was also fined the amount he had originally been paid for his work. This was despite the fact that the leak occurred more than 10 years after the building was completed. In 1750, the second year of the Summer Palace construction project, Emperor Qianlong commissioned the painting 8 Great Sights of Yanjiang. One of the 8 great sights was Western Mountains after a snowfall. After the Summer Palace was completed, this painting was altered to include Lake Kunming, which had been absent from the original. Lake Kunming was the largest body of water in any Qing dynasty imperial garden. The inspiration for the name Qing Yuan, Garden of Clear Ripples, was the rippling waves of the lake's blue waters. More so than at any other imperial garden, the combination of Longevity Hill and Lake Kunming embodied the Chinese aesthetic ideal of mountains and waters harmoniously combined. The dredging of West Lake created a vast expanse of water to the south of Jar Hill. However, with all the water on one side of the mountain, the impression was rather unbalanced. Emperor Qianlong ordered that a channel be dug so that water would flow around the back of the mountain. Workmen also narrowed a number of mountain streams feeding the river so as to increase its flow. With water now flowing around its east side into Lake Kunming, Longevity Hill was transformed into an island.
Emperor Qianlong, it seemed, was obsessed with his pet project, a brand new garden in northwestern Beijing. The Summer Palace, as the garden would eventually be known, was a product of another of the emperor's obsessions, the scenery of the south. But what did this man-made marvel look like when it was finally completed after 15 years? Find out in episode 2 of Untold Stories from the Summer Palace.